God, if they can do that, then we should do that. So you started seeing the shareware thing going away, and more people working on free software and open source. And then that became a groundswell of interest that then brought the bigger companies taking interest in it. And now we've got the industry that we've got today, which is much more balanced. The same thing can happen with music. My goal with Severed Fifth is that Severed Fifth is that example. Is that I've been working in communities for a while now. So my goal is to basically take my background and experience of building community and my interest in music and to fuse the two together. So Severed Fifth becomes a really good example of a band that's been successful doing it with the free culture way of doing things.
Well, just being a devil's advocate here for a second, because I want to see if you've addressed this.
Yeah.
I'm going to argue that Linux really didn't take off until Red Hat found a way to make money with it.
Oh, I'd say yes and no.
Okay.
It depends on what you define by takeoff. So if you're talking about huge corporate success, then I'd agree. Companies really started considering Linux when Red Hat started putting their name behind it and making it a viable option. In terms of smaller projects, just being able to make software together and enjoy collaborating together and getting some success with their software, projects like Inkscape or even things like Firefox at the beginning,
right.
And those kinds of projects, then it didn't really need Red Hat per se. It just needed the environment to be one in which success could be driven by open source software.
Well, I'd also argue, though, that the fact that Red Hat was able to stand behind Linux gave a halo effect to a lot of these other projects, though.
Oh, yeah. Totally. Absolutely. And, it all basically helps. So what I'm talking about here in many ways is there's two elements to consider in this change in the music industry. One is the opportunity surrounding the bands, and one is the opportunity surrounding the industry. The problem right now is that the industry, I think, benefits in the sense that the labels are the people who reap the financial rewards in many cases if they're willing to put the chips on the table and to invest in the bands. The problem that we've got right now is, again, the same kind of problem that we had with publishing. If you remember back, let's say, probably 15 years ago, if you wanted to be a writer, the only way you could be successful, really, is if someone gave you a break in a magazine or in a newspaper or with a publisher with a book.
Absolutely.
There was no blogging. There was no online writing. There was a very small group of people compared to the number of writers who made the decisions about editorially what was acceptable. Blogging changed all of that. And now some of the best writers in the world are writing them on their own blogs. And they got into writing for newspapers and magazines via success via their blogs. The same thing's happening with music, is that, in my 15 years of playing in bands, I've played with hundreds of bands. Like anybody else who's played in bands for that long. It's nothing special to me, but I've been playing with hundreds of bands, and some of them are just absolutely unbelievable. These people blow some of the commercial artists out of the water, but they never get noticed because the way in which success is decided on in the record industry is that you get signed. What I want to do is I want the same thing to happen to music that happened to blogging, which is bands that are really good at what they do get success because the common culture is that you give your content away, you spread the content around, and then fans engage with your band and support it in other ways. So I think there's an opportunity for bands for us to see better content, because bands will if we have a more open sourcey way of doing things in the music industry, we'll see better content in the same way that if you compare the shareware world with the open source world, I think we'd all agree that open source is a lot better than most shareware.
Sure.
Because all that quality got to bubble to the surface. But also, in the same way in open source, we've seen companies like Red Hat and Novell and Canonical and various other companies thrive. I think that we can see the same thing in the music industry. There's still a huge amount of product opportunity surrounding bands, in the same way that there's a huge amount of product opportunity surrounding free software as well.
Well, I'm just curious about that, though. But one of the differences is that I'm a consumer of music. I'm not a co-producer, and so in this, I don't see exactly the similarity between this and, say, an open source software project where I can be both a consumer and a contributor. Is it just because I'm not a musician, so I don't see the angle to that, or are you really just trying to talk about something like Severed Fifth putting out product and having other associated services be where the money flow actually happens?
I think it can happen in both ways. So, for example, you're a consumer of music in the same way that my mum is a consumer of software.
Mm-hmm.
My mum doesn't contribute to any software whatsoever, but she is empowered by the choice that she's got available to her.
Sure.
So in terms of the collaboration angle, I think the element is that in the software world, one of the great things that open source brought to us was making it clear how people can collaborate around software that was traditionally done by just 3 or 4 people.
Mm-hmm.
And you could apply the same analogy to music. 3 or 4 people are in a band, and they make the music. So this is a good example of one thing that we're trying to change with Severed Fifth is Severed Fifth is not just a band, but it's a community. It's a collaborative community. So, we write the music, we perform the music, we record the music, we put it out there. But there are so many other things that people can do to participate in Severed Fifth. So as an example, there's a guy called Rob Keelty who loves the band, loves the music. He's an Android programmer. So he's created an Android Severed Fifth app. So when we're doing a show, I'll tweet where we are. Let's say we're hanging out in a bar down the road from the show.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tweet from that, and then if you're running the Severed Fifth app, a little notification pops up on your phone, and it tells you where we are, so you can come and hang out with the band. We've got a guy who's working on a Severed Fifth fanzine. We've had a guy called Toronto Mario he's done probably about 50 Severed Fifth wallpapers. Some people have done some mobile wallpapers. We've had some people working on a Fret Some Fire game. So there's all these kinds of like collaborative elements that are not necessarily specifically the music. One thing I'd like to do in the future is I'd like to have a competition whereby people can make videos for Severed Fifth songs. All that kind of stuff, I think, shows the potential for people collaborating in a community in which the content is actually built by that small group of people.
Now, are you also envisioning people taking like your raw tracks and doing mix-ups on them? Mashups?
Yeah, absolutely. So the actual songs are licensed as Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike. But one thing that I'd like to do is I'd like to get the original instrument tracks out so people can use them and they can remix them. The reason why we haven't done that so far is because we want to re-record our demo as a full album,
mm-hmm.
And that leads me on to neatly into something we're calling the Severed Fifth recording campaign. So this is basically what happened. Is we recorded. So basically, there's the demo that we put out there is called Nightmares by Design. If you go to severedfifth.com/releases, you can check it out. I know you've been having a quick listen to it today, Randall. And it's I recorded it in my home studio. I recorded it in the room I'm sat in right now. I did bass, the drums. Jim, our guitarist, came and did some solos, but I recorded everything because the other guys had just joined the band and they were still learning all the content.
Well, speaking of that, why don't we play one of the cuts from that? What cut would you like me to play?
Why don't we have a look at, let's put on Political.
Okay, Political, and why don't we set it up a little bit? What's the song about, if there's even means anything in metal?
Oh, everything's written about something. So Political is basically it's a song about somebody who goes to the voting booth and they realize that they don't want to vote for anybody who's on the paper. It's just written about people who are dissatisfied with politics in general and the bickering and the nonsense and and the insanity that is the American political system.
I think you're describing 60% or 70% of the political voters today. That's pretty appropriate, and given it's right around voting season here, it's really appropriate there. So let's go ahead and take a listen to that cut. Okay, that was